All right, David, mate. Welcome. Long time no speak.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a good couple of years since I've last sat down with you, had a proper chat. So
I know, mate. I know. Look, I thought maybe explain a bit. I'll explain how we know each other because you've always kind of stayed in my mind, not from a loving relationship type of way, but the message that you got across to me when we first met. You were kind of obviously ex-military.
Yeah.
Been successful, had your own marketing business you were running?
Sales company, yeah.
And you kind of, it felt at that time, you kind of like, yes, this is good, I've got the money, but I've got a real burning desire here to help people who've been in my position from the forces. And then you came to me kind of, just want a little bit of guidance, how can I construct a business around this passion?
Yeah.
And it was the first time somebody's brought the suicidality epidemic through to me. Like I knew about it, I'd heard it elsewhere, and I think it's a lot more known now. Everybody's talking about it. But back then, pre-COVID, how 4 or 5 years ago, whatever that was, you blew me away with those statistics. I couldn't believe how high it was generally.
Yeah.
And then the force was like 4 or 5 times higher than that.
Yeah.
And I was fucking gobsmacked. I couldn't believe that there was nothing as a society that we were really doing to do that, especially our men, women, boys, girls who were going away to fucking, to save, other societies and protect, our countries. And then it felt like they should get left to the scrap heap. So, you really opened my eyes there. So, and it ignited something in me that hasn't left me. So it's almost like as I've been doing my own thing within business, it's niggled the shit out of me, these statistics, and it's kind of, and as it's getting louder in society, and all the podcasts I listen to, Stephen Partlis must have done about 40 podcasts, and I've heard him say the words, I'm obsessed with, suicidality, and obviously male suicidality. 70% of all suicides are male. And I can't, and it's like, now it's the leading cause of death is suicide in certain age group, like 15 to 25,
exactly,
it's the leading cause of death. So, yeah, that blew me away. And if that's the leading cause of death, suicide, and the military is 4 or 5 times higher than that, it's fucking, it's actually, when you put it that, it's mind-blowing, right?
It is. Obviously, suicidality is awful. In the military especially, I think a lot of people put it down to conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, other things like that. But I spoke to you previously, and when I came in, I think one of the fundamental things is actually like a loss of purpose after leaving the military. Most people who do join the military join very young, myself included. I told you before, I joined at 16, straight out of school, never been away. And that was kind of my whole identity as a person for many, many years. Like, I wasn't just David anymore. I was David who was in the Marines. I was a commando. All my friends were the same, maybe older, some similar age. So, yeah, it was after I left, I found a massive identity crisis because that was who I was until I came back onto Civvy Street. And I was just David. No one really cared about the past, the background, of where I was.
Yeah, and that's. We'll get into the detail of that because that lack of purpose. I heard someone on a podcast say the other day for men is almost fatal. Yeah. Again, if suicidality is a disease, the root cause of that can be that lack of purpose that you're touching on, and a lot of kind of psychologists, doctors, whatever, really honing in on this message. So I think you're spot on. All right, so before we get into it, just so you touched on there, obviously, a lot of your kind of life and story and what made you from 16 years old going into the forces. So just go into a little bit about yourself, who are you and what's kind of programmed you to the man you are today? Because I think we are just a program, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's programmed you to who we are today?
So I joined the military like a lot of people do early on, more or less to escape the kind of family life I had as a young age.
What was that like?
Well, I had 2 parents, both alcoholics. Kind of me and my younger brother were kind of left to fend for ourselves sometimes, not all the time. I became kind of like the person who was kind of responsible for him to make sure he was okay. So there was a lot of pressure on me at that point.
Wow.
And as much as obviously I don't mind, because obviously I care about my brother, I love him to pieces, but it was kind of, I wanted to start afresh, have a new life. I saw kind of where I was growing up and where people were headed, and I just didn't want to have that path. So when I obviously joined the military, there was no quitting it for me. There was no maybe I'll give it a go. If I don't like it, I'll come back. It was like, I'm going to do this because the other option, I don't know where it leads, but it's not going to be where I want to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, I joined 16, straight out of school, went down there. I absolutely loved it. It was kind of like, it's not a job. It's a kind of way of life. It's something that is hard to explain unless you've been in there, but it's the camaraderie. It's the friends you make for life. Absolutely loved it. Obviously, I did my time because I went to Iraq. I did Afghanistan as well at 18 and 19. And then naturally it kind of came to an end because for me, the grass was the grass greener, doing something different. Like I said, I left when I was nearly 24.
Okay.
Seven years-ish in the forces.
What was your role there? What was your position?
I was just a frontline commando in the Marines, so frontline soldier. Leaving was kind of it was a strange thing because I saw my friends who were civilians. They were going on holidays, going on lads' holidays, and have a girlfriend at home and stuff like that. And I was always away, so it kind of made me wonder what that life was like. But soon after I left, I had that kind of identity crisis, as in no one cared what I'd done previously. And one of the things in the forces is like confidence breeds success. So from 16 years old, you're always told you're the elite, you're the best at what you do. And I understand exactly why that is, because when you get into a situation where you need to be confident in your own abilities, in the people around you, you don't have any problem doing what you have to do, or you don't have any doubt in your mind. The problem is when you leave, you're not that amazing person. You're just David, who now is looking for a job in certain aspects, in certain areas of the world where maybe those skills aren't transferable. You might now have a boss that's 2-3 years younger than you, who's maybe done nothing in comparison of what you might think. It was quite hard to adjust for me. And from what I know, like people who leave the military, they're one of the most things that employers look for the most is the kind of skills that they have. Like, for example, they're very resilient, they work hard. Yet a lot of people who leave are unemployed in the first 12 months. One of the highest rates of unemployment are people that leave the military.
Why do you think that is? Why are employers not taking them on?
I can give an example. So when I left, I went back to my hometown and I had the idea of getting into recruitment. So I went to Birmingham and they do these assessment days. It was about 8 hours. I think there's about 95 people there. Out of everyone on the assessment day, I actually scored the highest. And between me and two other guys, we had to present to the board for the role. And I was actually turned down because they said, we see you as like a diamond in the rough. However, we think you're going to get bored in this role, so we don't want to take that risk on you because it's a lot of training and I've never done an office job. So for them to kind of, pigeonhole me before they've even really known me, I thought was quite bad. I'm not saying that's everything, but...
Yeah, do you think that was a bit of a get out for them? Because there's this... do you think there's a stigma around the military?
I don't think there's a stigma around the military because I think if you speak to a lot of people, business owners, people who employ people, the qualities that veterans have...
100%.
Most people would say is 100%. A great quality to have, right?
Yeah.
Like very resilient, always want to work hard, always want to be the best, always very competitive. But yeah, I don't think there's a massive stigma. And it's hard to find the reason of why they are quite unemployable, or not unemployable, but they don't find employment. Sometimes I think that might be due to the fact that they are not finding their purpose.
Maybe it hits them straight away once you get back to the civilian streets, as you said.
Yeah.
If you come back and you're not going to be on your A game, if all of a sudden you're like, "What's this?" I've had stories, people, been fighting on the front line, in charge of X amount of people, really super smart, having to think on the feet in life or death situations. Then they're going and working in Subway, and it's like it can't feel good for you as a human being, right?
Exactly. So it's a massive change. And I think that's one that is difficult to adjust for people when they do leave. But I think it is something that they can definitely be handled in better ways. So, for example, in the military, we were always told, there's nothing out on Civvy Street, there's no jobs out there, we're kind of told that. It's kind of a retention tool. No, we get told that in a way that there's nothing out there because people will hear the stories of people going and making X amount of money. And then obviously the guys will think, I'd like a piece of that, but you're often told from higher up that there is nothing there. It's a waste of time. You'll rejoin anyway. So it kind of puts a negative feeling in people's head anyway before they leave. And then a lot of them, they struggle for maybe a few months and then they rejoin, even if they don't want to be there.
Isn't that funny? If you're going to set somebody up for success after the military, you've served for X amount of years, it should be almost, at the root, you should be helping people to understand how they could transition in early.
Yeah.
Rather, because it's if your whole gameplay is to keep retention, is to tell them how hard out there, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to walk out with any great skills or understand how to transition into that world, right?
Well, 100%. So we do a thing in the UK called resettlement, which when you put your notice in to leave is 12 months, where they allow you to do courses. There is this. But the thing is you get these young guys like myself, no one's telling you what you should do. It's as much or as little as you want. And for a person who's never been on Civvy Street, never had to even rent an apartment, anything like that, all these kind of skills kind of go by the wayside. You've never had to do it, but no one's telling you how to. Does that make sense?
100%.
So it becomes a kind of snowball effect.
It really knocks your confidence as well, coming out with stuff like that. So you went into the forces. It sounds like that's your whole adult life. Difficult upbringing with family. You had to kind of take the lead in certain spaces. Then you dropped out, and you kind of you felt lost. So before we get any further, I wouldn't mind taking a look at your scoring. So I always ask everybody to do the ratings. So we've gone through health and fitness, inner work, love and relationships, social connections, and work and life flow. So at your worst, not very surprising for me, because I get these scores a lot from people that who do this. At your worst, out of a possible score of 20, 4 questions in each area, you were 3 out of 20. And then as you are today, 14 out of 20. Nice, solid, got some bases. So if I walk through them first, so at your lowest, health and fitness out of 4, you scored 1. Inner work, so kind of trying to be present, look after yourself, understand what life is. As a kid at 16, you've just gone straight in. I'm sure you weren't taught these things. 0, no surprise. Love and relationships, 0. Social connections, 2. And work and life flow, 0. So what I always say to people, if you haven't got a solid base in one of those pillars, which is can act as your safety net through difficult times, you don't risk. I always say, I remember me and you speaking about the military back in the day when you were trying to look at how can you help people on the way. And we were talking about a risk matrix, remember?
We were,
It's never left me, hence we've kind of got this here now. And I look at it and I think, wow, there's some simple actions that you can take there. And if people knew the pathway to walk, it can help them. So when you looked at your worst and your higher today, did you have any aha moments where you kind of went, that makes sense? Or what was your biggest realization when you just done this simple kind of quiz?
The biggest realization, I think, was, especially at my lowest, was actually, it's very rare you actually ever think back to your lowest point, because you probably tried to avoid it. And I thought about that time. And for example, you said there I scored 2 on the social connections. But the problem with that is I've always been socially good. I've always had people around me. However, at times at my lowest, I probably had the wrong people around me that were actually negatively affecting me.
That's a good point. How were they negatively affecting you?
It's just the wrong crowd, into no real ambition. I'm a big believer that you are the people you surround yourself with. No ambition, crime, like just living day to day, no real future plans. And again, it's like when I said when I was younger at 16 and I kind of left because I could see myself going down 1 or 2 paths, and I didn't want that for myself. And I saw that again when I was at my lowest point, when I look back, and I think I had social connections, but were they the right ones? Probably not. Good reflection.
And then, so did you see, and at your lowest, kind of, how low did it feel? How dark did it get, for you at that lowest point?
It was pretty low. It was the lack of kind of direction from health and fitness. For example, I've always been adamant about training, going to the gym, keeping fit. That was kind of gone because I had no motivation for it, no partner. It was pretty low. I never thought about suicide myself, but I would say I was depressed, with kind of no real way out. Where other times I've been low, and I kind of know what I need to do to get myself through that. Where this, I was kind of felt like I was stumbling around in the dark, just kind of hoping.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good analogy, just stumbling around in the dark. I think
a lot of people do it.
They're just stumbling around in the dark. That's a great analogy. I always say that everyone's suffering.
Yeah.
I think everyone.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if anyone ever got 20 out of 20.
No, if they don't, if they don't, they're telling fibs.
Yeah.
And also, those 20 questions, they're all achievable. They just give you a baseline.
Yeah.
And you could run and do them, but day by day, week by week, things drop back, move forward. But that thing, it's a really good analogy, as I say, that running around in the dark. I think just having this simplistic framework just turns the light on, and you go, oh, okay, if I walk this way, and that's why I think I think it's overcomplicated in society about what is fulfillment, what makes me happy, and that's why I preach about this all the time, because it's working. It's almost like 100% strike rate of people doing something and moving forward. So I'm glad you had a bit of a light bulb moment there. And where you are today, it seems like you've got a real solid sound base, and you're loving relationships now at 4.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that question I ask people, the first 2 questions, do you understand your non-negotiable values in a relationship?
Yeah.
And have you had that with your partner? You've said yes. You're the first person who has.
Yeah.
You're the first person who has, because that's a big realization. So that's fantastic that you're that aware to have that, because that's the fundamental of any friendship, relationship. You've got to understand yourself, know what you want, and then verbalize it. Because most people have it up here and then throw resentment out and they haven't even explained themselves.
Like, it's a work in progress all the time, 100%. And it's like sometimes you slip out from it. And it's the same with my partner, right? There'll be things that I do that annoy her. And sometimes I realise I have to get back on the right track to have those kind of values. But yeah, it's something that I think is very important to vocalise, because especially as men, I think it's very, very difficult to read between the lines sometimes and guess what people are expecting from the relationship, vice versa, right?
Again, that's communication, and it actually takes accountability from both parties to actually talk and communicate with love and empathy. So, no, that's great that you've looked back and had that reflection. I'm always interested to see kind of what you get. So, how far away do you think when you're at your lowest, because you talk around lost and purpose, and I can see your work-life flows, high as well, your love and relationships high. How far away do you think you were from your true self? And your true authentic self, I always simplify it. I say, we come out, I said it a million times, we're a ball of love, and then we just start getting programmed by external forces, parents. In your case, you might have had alcoholic parents, the situation of having to look after your brother, school problems, work, military, all this program. Half of it's not you. You know what I mean?
No.
So at your lowest moment, how far away were you from the David Taggart that sits here today?
Pretty far. I was kind of walking around, like I say, in the dark, but almost like a zombie. Like, I've noticed that there was at times there where I never felt really down. Like, I did at maybe occasionally, but I usually would be sitting at like a 4 out of 10, happy, kind of numb. You know, like, I could go to do something that usually really excited me. I could go skydiving, and I would just be like, that was okay. And I realised that's kind of where I realised there's something wrong here. That's not normal. That the lows aren't really low. I just didn't care about anything. And that was a scary thought for me, because when you stop caring about things, you stop caring about trying to get better. And yeah, it was a long way away from where I am now, because now I experience some massive highs. I love life sometimes, but I also understand when a bad day's happened, I can feel down. There's nothing wrong with that.
100%.
And I think maybe this came from after leaving the military as well. Or, like I say, you say when you're 16, you're very, very moldable. And one of the things they used to say to us in the military is no emotion, constantly. Show no emotion. So you get in the cold, the wet, but it was never show emotion, because it was training you to be strong mentally. But then you kind of take that out and you join normal life and you have relationships. And for a lot of the first relationships I had during and after the military are ruined for X, Y, Z reason. A lot of it was this, showing no emotion, acting like you don't care, not wanting to, like, do you get what I mean?
100%.
Like,
And that's just your perfect description. You've been programmed, right? And it's like, not just children, but humans are very programmable. There's a lot, we get programmed by media, we get programmed by business, we get programmed by governments. We're very programmable. So the good thing about that, though, is we can reprogram as well.
Of course.
Because the neuroplasticity, we can reprogram. But no, that's a really good point. So back to the forces, because not going into, I don't want to get into anything that you don't want to share or anything too graphic, but I think it's important to understand what some of our young men and women go through. So if you served in Iraq and Afghanistan, did you experience any, big traumatic experiences within there?
Not a massive amount personally. Some, like when I was in Afghanistan, one of my good friends that I actually was in training with, or a similar time, Dean got killed. He was killed by an IED. That kind of didn't hit me till a lot longer afterwards, after I'd come back from Afghanistan. And, you know, just sat around thinking about the fact of I'm still here, my friend's not. We actually, it was quite a tough one for a long time to actually handle. Not so much the traumatic event, but just the idea that why am I here and he's not? A lot of people call it a survivor's guilt. I've heard of this before. I don't think it's that. It was just, he's a good bloke. He was young. He was 18. Why did that happen? You know?
Yeah, no. Look,
or 19.
Yeah, and how old are you then?
19.
Wow.
You know?
You're still a kid, really. You know.
Yeah. You're still a kid. And yeah, it's
So you're talking about your fellow servicemen then, and that's just one person that passed away, you know, in duty. What, you know, you call them lost heroes or what, you know, however they're described. But obviously there's the other side of that. There's the, as you said, there's the lack of purpose, a huge amount of depression, lost, you know, the suicide rates go through the roof, but there's a lot of them just struggling out there, right? And I think a lot of them end up in prison and stuff like that as well. Yeah. I think I remember you telling me, you know, how many was in your, was it battalion or whatever you call it? Excuse my lack of knowledge.
A troop, right? But out of the ones that like we spoke about, right? So we used to live like on a floor, like in the building, like we had rooms. And out of them, 2 of us now live in Australia. 2 of them went to prison. 1 of them committed suicide, and 2 or 3 others are just off. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm assuming hopefully okay. But those statistics out of like 8 or 9, 10 people, it's ridiculous. You know, a couple of people in prison, someone's committed suicide, all young guys. They just couldn't seem to find their way after the military. And something needs to be kind of done about that, because it happens way too regularly for that.
100%, and that must have affected. That's after them. That must have affected. And I think that's why, obviously, when you initially came to me, you had this burning desire. You were like, "There's got to be." I remember you saying, "There's got to be something we can do."
There's got to be something we can do better, because I do believe that people try to do things. However, I think there's more we can be done, and there needs to be done more to be done.
100%.
What the angle is, I think things like yours. Like people just being aware of how they feel, their situations. I think things are hopefully getting better in the fact of men, especially, are now starting to actually talk about how they feel mentally. Yeah. Whereas back maybe 10 years ago, it probably wasn't as much of a thing.
No, not at all.
But yeah, hopefully we're heading in the right direction. But you know, we need to be there sooner rather than later.
100%. And you're right, because I remember you talking about. You spoke to me about. Almost sounded like a tick box exercise. So, servicemen and women, given their kind of you know, teenage years, early adult years, to their country, gone away, done whatever, seen horrific things, you know, traumatic experiences, and then that transition. It would almost seem like, you know, there's a health and safety course.
That's what I did.
See, I remember go into civvy world.
Yeah.
And that's just bonkers, you know. And I remember I was thinking. Couldn't you be talking to someone like a year out and say, okay, you're potentially on the way out here. Who are you? What have you learned here? What do you really like? What passion you do? And then help people, point them to the right people. And simple things like this. How are you feeling? How are you feeling in health and fitness, inner work, love and relationships, social connections, work life? Oh, you're low. Oh, there's a path here for you to be more fulfilled. And you should keep an eye on that when you go into civvy world. Let's keep an eye on this inner work so you can understand this stuff. And I couldn't get it around my head that it was that tick box. And is it still that way?
Obviously, I left 2014, so it's been a while. But back in the day, like I say, it was a tick box. I did a health and safety course because I heard a rumour that you can get paid good money if you go to like Jordan or someplace like that. And I was like, but I went and did the course, absolutely hated it. Like, for example, it's just not for me. It was boring in my eyes. No offence to anyone who does health and safety, but it wasn't for me. So therefore, no one told me, well, maybe try something else. I just decided, well, I'm just going to go to Ibiza after I leave and spend 4 months there, and I'll deal with the rest of life after.
Just run away from it for a little bit.
Run away. But I just thought that everything will work itself out, right? But I came back. Luckily, through a friend, I got a job. But I had no plans. I had no, I didn't know what transferred out of what I did into a real world job, say, for example. So it was difficult. But I luckily had someone there to give me an opportunity. A lot of people don't, you know. I spoke to a guy when we were actually talking about doing that. I was talking about doing that business. I remember I told you about the guy who's from Sydney.
Yep.
He left the military through an injury because he had a parachuting accident and broke his legs. Wow. And he didn't know how to do anything. He couldn't get a job. He didn't know how to get rent anywhere. He didn't know how to get DVA, the veterans funding to get things back on track. And I did an interview with him a bit like this and just kind of got his story. And he was like, no one really helped me. I was just kind of left by the wayside. Like I couldn't serve anymore because I was medically discharged, but then no one really cared enough to... He had said he had a couple of good friends, but there was no kind of real, how do I say, like group or anything that really seemed like they gave a damn, which is a bit of a mess.
100%. And because you touched on before about the one amazing thing about the military is it's like that brotherhood or sisterhood or militaryhood, whatever you kind of you want to phrase that as. It seems like such a solid bond that you get when you're in there. Yeah. And to come out, I mean, totally different analogy, but I remember when I was a kid, you know, having the freedom of going on my first holiday, which was Ibiza. I passed my GCSEs. Yeah. My mum said she'll pay for me to go to Ibiza.
Off you go.
So I had 2 weeks, just 16, not even 17 yet, and 2 weeks in Ibiza, and it was like complete freedom. And like, I remember just knocking around about 20, 30 people, and we were all together for 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I come home and I was by myself, and I had to go back to work and stuff. And I was depressed for 2 months after that.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine the difference for you guys coming out of this unbelievable tight community of brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
How hard is that transition?
It is hard, and it's interesting you say about coming and being on your own. That's something even to this day I struggle with. Wow. It's being on my own. Like, even if I'm sat in the house on my own, I'm still thinking, what's everyone else doing? I want to be around others. Okay. It's kind of like almost like an attachment thing. Yeah. Like I like to be, I've been around people since I was young. I went from school to the military, always around people. And in times when I do find myself on my own, I do feel a bit agitated. I like to be around others, which is a strange thing for a 32-year-old guy. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But it's something I'm aware of. And it's something like I said to you, I think it was last week, I want to spend a bit of time on my own, out of the world, go for a little swim, sit on the beach in my own head, because I've always tried to escape that essentially by always being around friends, having a laugh, you know, and not having to really think about what's going on inside my own head, trying to avoid it essentially. Oh, wow.
That's a great realisation. I think you've done, I mean, saying from the questionnaire, you've done the questionnaire and you said, tomorrow I'm going to do this, and you did it.
That's it.
That's amazing.
That's actually from listening to the last podcast.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So that's a great realisation because the key, that's a growth, that's a definite kind of growth ball that you can attack. And you've got to being comfortable in who you are, because when you sit with yourself, you meditate, it'll come at you and you'll go, okay. And the things you've got to deal with and you've got to process to kind of continue your growth. I mean, you've done fantastic growth and, you know, successful and all that. And but I think that is something that I really hope you keep getting stuck into. That's
I wasn't really aware of it until and then I was like, I actually realised I'm never on my own. Or I'm kind of always distracting myself. I'm never alone with my own thoughts. So that's something I'm actively now trying to change and grow with.
Yeah, so beautiful, because on a growth journey, you can have a forced loneliness thing, because you sometimes you get, with just got before, you kind of start disassociating with this. You know, you said before, making sure it's just not people for social connections. It's the right people. You want energy. You don't want energy vampires. You want energy boosters. Yeah. So you can go through that. But it sounds like it looks like you've got a good, you know, it sounds like you've got a good community. You know, a great relationship. So you probably have to step out yourself. To do that growth. So that's fantastic. So when you came out, I had a podcast with a friend of mine, Stephen, recently. Okay. I just dropped one with him today, and he had a real. Not functioning alcoholic, but he was getting smashed 4 times a week. You know what I mean? He was definitely running a safe, so, you know, partying this, that, and the other. Were you clouded by drinking at any point during your transition? Did you ever kind of ever take you down that route?
Not really. I think a lot of people who get dependent on alcohol, they do it obviously to escape. But for me, I've always been quite aware because of my parents. That I know people fall into it, but they follow kind of trend, but I always looked at it as something I'm not going to do. Yeah. Like I go out, have a drink. I've done that a lot, you know, and especially when I was younger, but it's something I was always very wary of. Like I wouldn't like to get up and have another drink the next day because I'm like, I don't need this, you know. So I was trying to be really conscious of that.
Oh, that's good, because that's something, if you add that to the mix then, I always say, your true authentic self is blocked by the drink.
Massively.
So if you've got all these problems, I would say just try and remove some.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't drink or anything like that. I'm saying when if you're in a low position, take that off the cards so you can actually,
100%.
make decisions clearly. Remove one fog at least from your the kind of the poison that runs around your head a lot of the time.
So it's funny you say that. Like a while back, a couple of months ago, I spoke to like a counsellor just because I thought it was a good idea to speak to a counsellor. I think everyone should.
100%.
Like every single person, like you say, no one's perfect. And one of the things I actually brought up was I feel so much worse after I've drank. I don't drink that often now, maybe once every few weeks or whatever. But for the week after that, I struggle to exercise. I struggle to be with myself in my mind. I kind of anxious feelings.
Cravings for the shit food come in.
Yeah, easy. Work takes a massive hit. It affects every kind of aspect of my life. And I'll be honest with you, it's only quite recently that I've realised that. So it's not even drinking every day. For me, if I have a big night, it will affect me for the next 7 to 10 days. I'll never operate at like 100% after that.
That's great. And it's about return on investment, and it's about how you drink, what you do. And again, I'm not saying I used to party like there's no tomorrow. And it was only recently I did exactly the same exercise as you. I kind of looked at my pillars, and I was discussing it last week, and I just looked and said, when I drink, even if it's like 4, 5, 6 pints, whatever, is it affecting any of these pillars? And I just went into the first pillar, love and relationships, and I highlighted that in all of my meaty arguments or heated debate, shall I say, with my partner, it was all drink related because I was clouded. But then it eats into your everyday life because you'd have this blowout, which isn't you, all the piss. If you're both pissed, your ego comes in the front, you just pass poison to each other.
100%.
But you remember that, and then you get back down, you're angry and all this, and it can take, and it's like it's not even you. So but it can chip away at a relationship over a period of time.
100%.
So that was one for me. I was like, oh, that's a bit of an aha moment for me. And I didn't even think, I might drink once a week, and I might go like, but when I looked, I thought, is this adding value to my life? Do I need it? And I asked myself the question, why am I doing it? Hit the first wall, which is, no, why am I doing it really? And I asked myself 3 times, then I just hit this wall of, I think it's just a program. All right, do I need it? So I've stopped now for kind of 7 months, haven't drank apart from once with my mum and dad when I was in Mykonos. And I'm not saying I'll never do it again, as I've described many times on the podcast, but I think it's important that people just reflect, ask yourself the question. You may or may not still do it, but just check, is it affecting your life in any of the pillars? Usually you'll find it is.
Usually it's like you say, it's a snowball effect. So if I go out and drink, I might eat bad the next day, not go to the gym. Then that affects my work, which in turn, when I come back from work, it's not been a great day. It affects my relationship. It affects almost all of the pillars, even if you don't put the connection together.
100%. And that's what I mean. I'm a big believer in if you can see it, you can manage it. And as humans, if you simplify stuff, which is why this is simple, if I just said, just that very question, if I just draw up on a board with someone and say, right, you drink, what happens after that? And you just walk through, people will go, oh, shit, actually, you're right. And then there's only so much of that you want to do in your life, right? If you want to really enjoy life and experience the duality of life and the artistry of humanity, if you're drinking all the time, you're not going to do that. There's a guy who I know, I watch him, and he has one day where he's on fire. He has one day. He'll drink Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He doesn't think he's got a problem. And then I see him he might not drink on a Wednesday, and then on a Thursday he's firing on all cylinders. I see him operating like a beast, but then it's almost like, I'm going to go out now because I feel great again. You know what I mean? He has a few days off, and then he's on, and I look at him and I think, do you realise you are just flatlining on maybe like 40, maybe 30% of how you could enjoy this experience? Again, return on investment. Okay. And again, what we're describing and from a service perspective, it's not just in the military. It's not just in the military. That lack of purpose is massive within men. I think the changes in society are doing more and more damage. Kind of there's a lot of things out there of describing men and stuff like that, which I think has gone way too far. But the military obviously is on steroids. It's like 4 times higher. But it's a massive problem across society. For you, what was your turning point for you that kind of, what made you realise, hang on a minute, I'm not functioning at my best here. I'm struggling a little bit. What was the turning point for you?
The turning point for me, well, it's hard to put a place on an individual thing. It was just kind of a collection of things. I just realized, like I said before, I'm just not operating the way I should be. It was leaving the military. That was my purpose. That was everything I wanted to do. I left and I found that now I have no idea where I want to go. The first job I had was basically doing payroll, administration. Hated it. Not even anywhere near my skill set.
Not your ideal role.
No, the worst. And then, yeah, it just kind of snowballed. And then I started to not care about that. Then I would hang around with the wrong crowd. I would get drunk far too often, take whatever kind of drugs at the weekend. There's no harm in saying that, right? A lot of people do it, right? And it just kind of snowballed. And I don't really know the exact moment, but after the military, I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I see myself doing, or how to get anywhere. So I just kind of got myself in a hole and just sat in it.
Yeah, and how did you get out of that hole?
Well, the biggest thing for me is I came to Australia.
Yeah,
I went travelling.
Yeah, was that? It's funny you should say that, because I think that's really important. Sometimes it's a complete change, right?
It felt like a fresh
massive
start.
action.
It felt like a fresh start. Like, it wasn't even the plan to come here. We were travelling around Southeast Asia for a few months, and it was just like, should we go to Australia? Give it a go. And flew over and never looked back, never went home. And it was the best thing I did, because I kind of felt like I was having a fresh start, a new start. And Sydney especially is one of those places where it's kind of like the land where there's so many people from all over the world coming and starting new, where it's very different. Especially in England, if you come from a smaller town, smaller city, it's you get a job, or you go to uni, you get a job, you get a house, you get a car, you get married, you have kids, and then that's it. And if you're not in that kind of process, you're behind. And then you start to stress about that. Well, I don't have a car, or I don't have a house. But here it's like a fresh start. You'll see people who were 35 starting their life again. You know?
No, I found that. I was 35 when I came here.
Okay.
Yeah, 47 now. And I found that I was in a marriage, wasn't the best relationship, never should have went in it. And I was trying to do that thing that you've just described in Liverpool, and I was like vanilla.
Not for everyone.
I was vanilla. I was like 50, partying at the weekend, trying to escape from the situation. Hated the grey, the rain coming at you sideways, miserable weather. I just wasn't enjoying it. So everything was about release. Friday, Saturday, turning off, hitting the button, getting smashed.
That's it, right?
In a relationship that wasn't right, and I made this conscious decision. I thought, when I'm going to Australia, I said, right, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to stop drinking as much now and partying as much now. And I did that maybe 3 months out. And I said, I'm going to make a conscious decision. When I get to Australia, I'm going to be a new man. I'm going to turn up. I'm going to be more positive. It's like in Liverpool, it's very, it's fucking tough, and everyone's kind of giving it the big ones. You walk the shop, people snarling at you, and it's like you've got to be on your guard, right? So you've got to have this kind of tough exterior. Where I was like, it's just all a facade, right? It's all a load of shit. You know what I mean? Everyone's just acting how they're acting, and it's a cultural thing. And I'm really glad I came from there. It gave me resilience and the duality of life. I love the culture and the people. But to come here, I was like the sunshine. Literally, someone turned the sunshine on, but in every possible facet of life. And what I liked about Sydney, because it's very transient, you've got all this collection of people who've travelled here, who've all got that same mindset of giving it a go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you get this energy around, and I was like, wow, it's a positive energy.
Yeah.
No one's snarling. Everybody's happy. You go on a beach, and it was a complete shift. I was like, I still can't believe I live here.
I know, I'm the same.
I still walk down the beach,
same.
and I'm like, how good is this? I've got unbelievable gratitude. The day I stepped off the plane, I remember just like, I'd never had the feelings of joy like I'd had before. It was like overwhelming. I was like, I can't believe I live here. And I often still have those moments now.
It's a land of opportunity as well.
100%.
Like, you can work hard, and you can actually find your purpose here.
100%.
I believe that.
I think it's an easier environment to do that, especially when you get out and the weather's good. But I think you can find that, and it's that discipline and resilience. Okay, so how does your life feel and look like now in comparison to your lowest? How have you changed, and how do you feel as a human now today from there? How drastic is that change?
From my lowest point, it's massive. Obviously, I still feel like there's areas to work on. There always is, but I would say overall, I'm happy now. Like, I'm genuinely happy. Like, my health and fitness, I did on the scores. It's never where you want it to be, right? Like, 100%. You can go to the gym 7 days a week, but you say your body will never look like it wants to, right? But my relationship's good. I've got a really good group of friends. Life is good in where I am, but it's only because I made certain choices to get myself out of situations to put myself in a better environment. So yeah, I can say now it's a world of difference compared to where I was at my lowest. So
Good on you.
I'm happy.
Good on you. And so I ask a lot of men who come here, like, we've all done things in the past that we're not proud of or behaved as we are. Have you managed to? You can tell me what some of them are or whatever, but have you managed to forgive yourself? You know, because one of the things I think in inner work is forgiving yourself and others. People sometimes forgive others, but they run around their own head about the things that may be done. Have you managed to release, the stuff that you do? I think that's really important for men.
Yeah, I think
for anyone.
Of course, right? I think nobody is perfect. There's not one person in the world that can
perfectly
say that
imperfect.
Yeah, of course, right? People do make mistakes. People make bad decisions. I have forgiven myself, obviously, for things maybe I've done wrong in the past, because I'm a completely different person to how I was even 2 or 3 years ago. And if I met myself now, if I met the 18, 19-year-old version of me, I'd think they were a dickhead. So
me too.
Yeah, right? You grow and you change, but I think it's important to realise that everyone is on kind of a journey, and it's the things I've done. Obviously, in the past, I have made mistakes, and I am sorry that I ever did it. But you have to
move on.
Yeah, exactly. You move on. And looking forward is just to try to not repeat mistakes.
Yeah, learn from
it. I think if you don't learn from it, then there's a problem because you're not trying, or you don't think it's a problem. So yeah.
Yeah, it might be deluded.
Maybe.
What's your greatest passion now? So what and I remember helping people who've maybe been through similar things to you.
Yeah.
Is that still bubbling away? Have you got any passions really going on now? What gets you out of bed?
Yeah. So passions. Yeah. I do still want to help veterans, so that's something that I'm actively kind of working away on at the moment.
Okay.
To try to bring that back, because again, like you mentioned and like I spoke about, there's definitely more that can be done, and I don't think there ever will be enough. And for me, I put it on the back burner for a long time. Like I spoke to you before, it was during lockdown. I was looking at the idea, but then life came at me. You get back into the routine of doing things, and it was something I always wanted to pick up and do again. And I think actually speaking to you the other week, it kind of gave me the impetus to be like, do you know what? You're doing something that's good for people. Why did I not continue to do this? So, yeah, I've got that kind of passion, and life is pretty good. Like, I still say I'm passionate about going to the gym and stuff like that, but I probably need to put a bit more effort in now.
Well, I'm really glad you've got that passion back about that, because I genuinely believe there's a pathway, and it's a kind of similar methodology to this. So that's maybe something we can both have a chat about and see what we can do, maybe even together, to help there, because I think that is an unbelievable cause that can't fucking believe no one's tackled it. I don't think it's as hard to make an improvement as it's being made out to be. I think it's just not giving a shit about it.
And again, it's not you're never going to fix the problem completely, but
of
if you make 1%
you can help.
It makes a massive difference.
There's a way of helping.
Exactly.
I know there is.
Exactly.
The things that we're doing are helping.
Exactly.
They're just people. We're all humans, so this model's working. Let's fucking get it in there. So we'll talk. You talked about there, if you met your younger self, you'd call him a dickhead. I would probably give my one a bit of a slap and say, what are you doing, you idiot?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way your brain thinks, the ego is massive when you're younger, right? And especially if you're unaware and on the piss. What advice would you give your younger self today?
Oh, that's a good one, to be fair. The advice I'd give to my younger self is probably not to worry too much about things that are outside of your control. Just focus on what you can do in your kind of environment, with what you've got. I think when I was younger, and I think a lot of people do this, especially when I left the military, was how can I get rich quickly? How can I get money? And to be honest, money's great, but I think it doesn't bring happiness.
Not at all.
It's a good thing to have if you have other components, those pillars. If you have a lot of money and no relationships, no friends, it's not going to make anything.
It means piss all.
Yeah, and if you sacrifice your health and you don't go to the gym because you think you're too busy and stuff like that, or you don't keep fit, I think I got caught up in that. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to see what I can do financially, but I would just say, It's about having a balanced life, you know?
Good advice.
Yeah.
Don't just chase the dollar.
Yeah, I think most people do, right?
100%. When you're young, you've got to have a solid base to enjoy this life, you know what I mean? And you've got to focus on yourself. So that'd be your younger self. What advice would you give to any servicemen who are struggling today? I know you've got a real passion for that, you know. Is it a similar kind of feedback, or, you know, is there anything that you think would really help?
Yeah, so I think, like, if people do want to leave the military, I would actually actively sit down and think that it's not just, you're not going to walk into something, but at the same time there is opportunities. But while you're in, do as much as you can to get yourself ahead, but to find your purpose or your passion. One of the things is most people who leave the military, especially like where I served in the Marines, most people go into like private security because it's an easy transferable thing. But I think people are often scared to chase their passions because maybe they think they'll get told they can't do it and stuff like that. But I think the best way, like you're doing this, I think the best way to actually achieve and be successful is do something that you believe in. So find that and just go for it with both hands, because
that's amazing. And maybe that's something, you know, they should be helped to understand what their bloody passion is, because most people don't ask themselves the question.
Well, that's it. Most people don't know. Like for me, like I didn't know what my passion was for a long time until I really spoke to you, right? And I thought, that's what I want to do. Most people, if you can tell me, like with no disrespect, if people are sitting there doing administration, that's not their passion. But at some point along the line, they've probably been told they can't, or they don't have the confidence or the self-confidence. And I'm a big one of, I think everyone should ask for help, because there's a lot of people out there who have the skills and the qualities and are willing to help, but they often don't know that these people need it because people are afraid to ask, for maybe being scared or feeling, you know, like a burden.
That's a really, really good point. And so, because what you're saying, it's on. At the end of the day, everything that we've described, the only person who's going to sort it out is you.
100%.
You know, that's the only person who's going to get yourself out of a hole, even if you're not in a hole, improve your life.
Yeah.
Live your life on the best authentic self, purpose-driven life. The only person who's going to fucking do it is you. Yeah. And as soon as you come to that realization, you go, okay, no one's coming in my world. Because if I talk about it in work, you know, I always talk about it in the work-life flow section. There's a lot of people when I coach them, first thing they'll say to me is, I haven't been given that pay rise, or I'm underappreciated, and I'll say, okay, and I'll say, well, does the boss, you know, does your leader know all of these things that you do? Well, they should know. And I say, okay, all right, have you kind of communicated with them? Do they understand what you do? You know, how many people do they lead? And they might lead like 50 people. I say, how can they possibly understand what the hell you're doing, how you're performing, as if you deserve a pay increase? Why don't you take control? Maybe create a little sales brochure of your own, manage up, show them the good stuff that you're doing. That'll help them sell up to them, because they'll feel good. And then in that process, you get closer, you build isn't that maybe one technique that you could take control of identifying? And they go, oh, maybe. It's like the world's not going to come and make your fucking life fantastic. No. So I always say, number one, it's you. Yeah. And I think by giving a simplistic, you know, we talk about these framework. I believe that genius is in simplicity in anything. And I believe so. If you give people a simplistic framework, it enables a shift in focus. So it's like, okay, you know, I know people in my life, I won't mention them, you know, back in Liverpool or here. You know, it's like this victim mentality. And, that's shit because that happened to me and this. Yeah. Well, are you waiting for somebody to walk in your life and be fantastic and change your world? Well, it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So if you've got problems in these areas, well, there's a little framework. Take these actions. Just walk through them. And I believe that shift in focus and mindset is so powerful, because what you focus on, the energy, you get more of. Yeah. So if you're zoned in and you think, we all have crap in our head. If I wanted to sit here now in my head and think about all the shit I've got to do, even within this program, all the, you know, the tasks and all that, I could sit here and bamboozle myself, get completely overwhelmed, stressed out, burnt out, but I don't. I prioritise, we've done some great stuff today. We're moving on this. I had a great chat with David. I'm just going to focus on the positive, because the stuff's going to get done. I'm going to move through those gears. And it's the same in life. If people just focused on all of this shit stuff, you're going to get more of the fucking shit stuff. Yeah. And it's like that.
That's what anxiety is essentially,
100%.
Right? Anxiety is just focusing on the stuff that hasn't happened or might never happen.
100%. So instead of focusing all your bloody energy on all of the crap, just focus on like this good framework. If I do this, okay, I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to take some action. And it's like that red car scenario. If you're going to buy a red car tomorrow, if I'm going to buy a red car, you'll see 50 red cars on the road because your energy and all your focus is dialed into that. So why not focus on the positives? Why not focus on the things you can do? And then once you realise it's only you, once you understand where I focus and if I take action, oh fuck, I feel happier because I've fulfilled. I've gone for a walk today, or I've played badminton today, whatever it may be. Yeah. I meditated, I went for a swim or whatever. Oh, I feel better. That's you. You're in control of your life. You're in control of how happy you can be. And I think that's what people need to do. So I think there's genius in simplicity.
100%.
I think focusing on things, that's your world. What you look at and think about, that's your fucking world. If you don't think about all the other stuff, I always say that some people who are completely, I think there's levels of consciousness 1 to 5, and some people who are maybe on a level 1 who aren't very conscious sometimes just walk around like very happy. And I think I wouldn't mind being like that sometimes.
Yeah, you see a few people like that, and you think they're living the dream, right?
Exactly. I think you bastard. But if you're up here and you see all this other stuff, but I think the next thing is, if you understand this, and there's a pathway to focus, but you then need to do the thing. You just need to do the thing. So me and you talking about doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Yeah. Me writing down on a piece of paper saying, I'm going to do that tomorrow, that's not doing the thing. Yeah. Putting it in my calendar for next week, that's not doing the thing. Telling me mate about how good I am at doing the thing is not doing the thing. Yeah. The only thing's doing the thing is doing the fucking thing. Yeah. And I think once you do that, what happens as a human? You get the fulfillment juice. I feel happy today, I've done that. And then you just take steps, and you don't have to you don't have to do shit tons. You don't have to come at it like a juggernaut. It's like you said, you watched our first podcast, I think I'll do this tomorrow, one step. Yeah. Did you feel good doing that?
I did, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah. Did it fulfill you a little bit?
Slightly, yeah. It felt it was a right step in the right direction,
exactly.
Right? And I think that's a very important thing, like having goals, like small goals, like that you can actually look back at the end of your week, end of your month, and think, you know what, it might have been X, Y, Z, shit happened, but I achieved this, this, and this. And you can actually feel some fulfillment from that as well. And for me, a long, long time, I didn't really have set goals, I just kind of drifted, I'd try my best here, try my best there, but, then you get to that certain point and you're not happy, so the goalposts shift, right? And you look back, and if I looked back now and I think about where I was when I first came here 8 years ago, I'd be very happy. I wouldn't expect to be, but it's easy to just get caught in that rolling cycle and never be happy.
Exactly. You roll and cycle, but the next thing, the next thing.
Just appreciation. Right?
That's a really good point you make there. It's kind of the position I'm in today.
I'd have killed for 10 years ago.
No, I came in and I had this thing, I'm going to do this. It was going to be achieve this senior role within the logistics business I was working in. I achieved that years ago. I'm far past that now. Yeah. But I'd never sit in it. I'm living way past what even I imagined I would do where I sit right now. And you're right, I often don't think about that. Yeah. And we should sit in gratitude with that more, That's
100%.
It's a really good point.
Like it's important to be ambitious and see where you want to go, but also realise where you've been and where you are now.
Do you kind of put your things down? You talk about plans. You actually write it down.
I have done, so I try to, especially when it comes to things like work and things like that, I try to have like short-term goals, weekly goals, things that I'm going to achieve within that week, even if they're very, very small. So I can tick things off.
And you get a little buzz when you tick it off.
You do, right?
Yeah.
And then those
give yourself a sneaky bit of fulfillment juice.
Exactly, and those will lead into like the longer term goals, right? Yeah. And just like you turn up, especially let's say for an example in sales. When we work in sales, I'm going to use an example. It's a work related goal, but if you look at the overall target where you're going to be for the year, if you break it down into daily and hourly things that you need to do, you'll get there, right?
100%. Bite-sized chunks. You should say that because you brought something to me, because I have a kind of a rolling 3-year big ticket item. I have it where I get changed in the kind of clothes area, and I have it there, so I'll look at it. And that focus thing, I don't know if it's and I'm usually I hit about 90% of them, because I glance at it, it's there in my face, and I look at it, go, okay. So it's things subconsciously, because I'm looking at this thing every day, right, do this, bring the corporate arm out of this, do this, get the app up and running.
Yeah.
I've got the date and I'm constantly looking at it. So it's kind of, you know, that red car thing scenario.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously it just
100%.
it just happens.
Like if you're working, you have a long day, you work until 10, 11 o'clock at night, you might be just like, oh, what a load of shit, right? I'm tired, I just want to go to bed. But you see that maybe and you think, that's why I'm doing it.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
It's just a reminder.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Great chat, I think. I'm really pleased that we've had this. I'm really pleased that you're going to maybe carry on and let's that thing that we spoke about initially, which I know was a real bubble and burning desire to try and do something to help ex-military servicemen. Yeah. I'm glad it's bubbling away again. I'd love to talk to you about that some more. I think there's definitely some stuff we can do there. And for me, you know, you talk around the definition of courage. Servicemen, you know, they have that in abundance. But I also think vulnerability is the definition of courage. Because if to be vulnerable, you've got to be fucking courageous because it doesn't feel good when you come through.
Exactly.
And I think that is the thing that can help so many people. I say it all the time. It's one of my taglines, vulnerability is a superpower. But I just think it allows us to get to the truth.
100%.
Because people mask it, the vulnerability. The ego comes in. They don't want to admit it. So we can't talk clean. If I'm not talking vulnerably to you, there's an element of masking something. Yeah. So as soon as two people go, fucking get rid of that. One takes the lead. You talk vulnerably, me and you can then talk truth, get to the root of shit, and sort shit out.
Very true.
You know. So I genuinely believe that vulnerability is the definition of courage. It's a superpower. And thank you for being vulnerable today. And it was a real pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.